coming.
Well, thank you, Mary and Tina. I appreciate being invited to present tonight. Yeah, Business Logic Advisor basically just means I make sure that the guidelines are current and that there's nothing brewing in Richmond that would have an impact on VADER. And we've been pretty lucky over the years in terms of changes that have come down the pike. But the biggest change that's come along recently is the adoption of the mixed custody guidelines. Now, you know, the legislature now has guidelines that are available for custodial situations where you've got like one kid who's a sole custody situation, another child who's a shared custody situation, or maybe you're splitting custody of two children and then you've got shared of another. And that's all provided for now in the Virginia Code, and therefore it's provided for in VADER, and I'll take you through all that. So as you all know by now, VADER has gone from an Excel format to an online format. So the first and most important thing to know is that you're going to need internet access in order to use VADER. And when you're in the courthouse, obviously there's courthouse Wi-Fi available. But my experience has been that it can be kind of spotty from time to time. So for tonight's presentation, I'm hotspotting off of Mike's iPhone, right? And for those of you, I mean, hopefully all of you know that if you have an iPhone, you go into your settings, you should have a personal hotspot that will allow you to sync to your computer and get internet access. So a lot of the times when I'm in an area where I'm not exactly sure that the internet is going to be that reliable, I'll use my hotspot in order to get online access for VADER. So you go to vaderonline.com, and this is the, I'm going to be looking at the computer, but this is what you see when you get to the first page, and very straightforward in terms of logging on. You're assigned a username and you're assigned a password. So you just type in that information, log in, and then you're on. And you see the little circle up here, that means it's working. So you know you're going to get there eventually. Okay, so you see on the left-hand side, this is your dashboard. And this allows you to navigate to all of the, you know, for those of you that have used the Excel version, this is where all of the spreadsheets are located and all the VADER workbooks are located on the left-hand side. The other thing I want to point out to you is down here on the bottom, VADER Online Support. 90% of the questions that we get about use of VADER are going to be covered here. And we've got VADER Online Frequently Asked Questions. If you click that button, it takes you to this page. Yeah.
The other link will actually email both Phil and myself directly.
But it talks about, you know, using your Apple device or a Android device, answers questions about storing sensitive data, gives you answers about the cost. It's $250 per year per user. Do you still support the Microsoft Excel-based version of VADER? No, we don't anymore. But you know, between you and I, if you're using the Excel version and you're, you know, because you like the format of it or you're just used to it, you can call me and ask questions, and I'm happy to answer those. But technically, we don't provide support for the Excel version. Can I share the VADER Online login with my firm? No, it's one login per user. If you need additional users, you have to pay for another license. You can always add additional users at any point if somebody joins your firm. Why did I receive an email message from VADER Online? Every time you log out of VADER, it's going to save your work. Whatever you were doing at that time, it's going to save a text, a file of the work that you were doing, and it's going to email it to you. And I'll talk more about that in terms of saving your work later. When I try to open a saved case file to review and edit its contents, why does it appear unreadable? That's because of the way the program stores the information. You can only review the information if you're in VADER Online. And so then, you know, you've got other questions down here. So the other thing that it has are some how-tos, how to sign up, and it'll take you through the different ways you can sign up for VADER and reset your password, that sort of a thing. So I just commend that to your attention because it's extremely helpful. If you have a question about how to use it, go to the frequently asked questions and see if it's there. It likely is. And as we go along, we're going to try to put on more tutorial videos that you can link to from the website. So hopefully that'll help you with questions as they arise. Okay, so that's the FAQ section. So when you log on to VADER, this is as I said, this is your dashboard. This is the page where you get started. Now, there are probably 3 scenarios where you're going to be using VADER. Number 1, you're meeting with a client for the first time. You want to run a quick guideline. Number 2, the client has retained you. You want to start a VADER file for the client. Number 3, you're pulling up information that you've worked on previously. Okay, the first thing I want to go over is what they call the quick consult. So if somebody's in your office, you just want to run a quick guideline, all you have to do is hit Start New Case. And then you'll be brought to this page. Okay, this quick consult button, you just press that, and VADER's going to open up what we call a quick consult file. Okay, that's the name of the file. It's called Quick Consult. That gives you access to all of the support workbooks, all of the equitable distribution worksheets. So if you want to run a quick child support guideline or a quick spousal support guideline, that's how you do it. You just hit Quick Consult, and then you go ahead and you enter in the information that you want to enter in. So just to give you an example of that, we're going to do the child support only calculation. Very simple, very straightforward, sole custody guideline. This is the worksheet entry information page that you're brought to. Okay. If this is too small for you, you want to make it bigger, just hit this button right here, full screen. All right. That makes it a little bit bigger for you. And again, the name of the file is Quick Consult. If you just want to enter in gross income, you do that right here, and it's monthly. And let's put the husband in at 15,000. And you just kind of scroll on down the page, make sure that you're putting in all the information that you need in order to run the guideline very quickly. So 3 kids, and it tells us that the guideline amount, sole custody, is $1,815 a month. Okay, great. So you've run the number, you're meeting with the client. Now it's at the end of the meeting, you want to give your client a printout of the worksheet. What do? You go back up to the top and you just hit print. All right. Now what VADER is going to do is create a PDF document for you. All right. And you'll see, you saw the little icon that it was preparing the file. You come down here to the lower left. You can see print PDF. Just click on that. And there's your child support worksheet. Okay. And what you're going to do is you can print this out directly onto your connected printer, or you can download the sheet and save it. So if you want to save it for later, you would just, give it a file name and it'll be saved as a PDF file. Now that file you can bring up at any point. You can email it to your client. Your client will be able to see it. But the actual information that's in VADER, you can't read it unless you're in the VADER online program. Does that all make sense? Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So that's your printed document. Let's go back up. Back to the beginning. So that's your quick consult option. The other option, if you're sitting down and the client's now retained and you want to open up a VADER file for that client, you just hit Start New Case. And think of it as a file for all of your child support, spousal support, equitable distribution, and tracing information. The idea is that you're going to be able to save all of the information for each of your cases in one .txt file that you'll be able to pull up anytime you're in the VADER online program. So rather than having 20 different Excel spreadsheets saved in your file, you're going to have one VADER file saved, and that will have all of your information for any particular case. So as an example, I'm now going to start a new case, and I'm going to give the case a file. So I'm going to call it, this is for internal purposes, I'm going to call it the Robert Smith file. And you may want to give a formal case name if you know that it's likely to end up in litigation or it's already in litigation. Smith versus Smith. If you want to assign a password to it to give an extra level of protection, you can do that. I have not yet had a case where I felt like I needed to set a password for that information because it's otherwise pretty secure. Then you come down and you have an option to either give each party a name label, or you can use one of the defaults, wife, father, husband, mother. Now, we're starting to see more same-sex cases. And so, do you have wife 1 and wife 2? It's usually easier to use their actual name. So in this particular case, I'm just going to say party 1's name is Bob, party 2's name is Mary. Okay, and if there's a case number that's been assigned, you would put in that case number. Save that information. Okay, and now you can see that it's saved as Robert Smith file. Case has been started. Your case file is ready. All right, so now this is going to give you access to all of the worksheets on the left-hand side. All right, and I'll take you through that. Yes, question in the back.
If you put a password on the file, will it also password protect the PDFs that come out once you print?
It will not. It will not password protect the PDFs. You'll have to use a separate password for that. So I'll show you. So we were when I got thrown off, I was showing you how to open up a new case file. Okay. So that's the second scenario, is when the client's now retained and you want to start creating that VADER file, and you're going to start inputting your information. You just hit start new case, and then you just start inputting the data. But if you're working on something that you've already been working on, you've put it aside for a couple of days, and now you're coming back to it, the option is to upload the information that you want, that you've previously been working on. So you just hit choose file. And I happen to save this. Mike put this on the desktop. See here, it's saved on the PC desktop. A lot of times it gets saved in the downloads directory. Okay, so I'm going to just take it off the desktop. Hit open. All right, and now I'm going to hit upload case.
And Dan, you always get an email whether you got kicked off or not. You always get an email
at the end of your session. Yeah, it's automatic.
And if you log off, click the log off button, the website will actually even prompt you to remind you to save your case file or email it to yourself.
Yeah.
So you have the option.
Now, all this is doing while we're waiting is just pulling up data that's saved on the C drive. That's all it's doing, and just uploading it. And it will not keep the information in the ether, right? It's all saved in the local directory. Okay, so you can see that the Pete Davidson matter now has been uploaded, right? And so what was already in there, I can't remember all the sheets that I filled out for this, but let's see if I had done a shared calculation. So I've just clicked on that. Yeah, you can see that, for example, I've already named the parties in this file, Pete and Ariana. It's a little bit outdated. They were together at the time I came up with that. Their gross incomes are already in there. So again, back to Doug, to your question, if I want to go and manipulate some of the numbers, if I find out new information, like if I find out that Ariana is now actually earning $3,000 a month, I just change that information, and now that'll be the next version that VADER saves. Okay. Trying to think of what else as I was using this, whether I had done anything in the ED forms. Let's see. Yeah. So I had input some information into the personal property worksheet, and that's all still here. And if you want to see what it looks like when I print it out, again, I just hit print. Look at the lower left. And that's a fully filled out personal property worksheet. And again, the problem that we're having is that, like I said, I like to list the real estate first. So I've got 2 pieces of real estate, and then I've listed the checking accounts, and then I've listed the vehicles. Well, what happens if I find another checking account? I've got to put it at the bottom under the vehicles. And what we're working on is creating something where I can just go ahead and, maybe input the information for the new checking account at the bottom, but then drag it up to put it where I want it in terms of the order on the sheet. Okay. All right. Yeah, you would correct it here. You would correct it where on the input page. Yeah. Absolutely. You got it. I mean, for each item of personal property that you're going to be entering, you're going to get I'm not sure what the proper term is, but this is what it looks like. And so for each item, you put a property description, date of purchase, title, is it marital or separate or hybrid, whether there's any lien associated with it. So you fill all of that out, and that's your first item. Then you go down to the next one, Virginia Beach House. And if you need to edit any of it, you can always go back in and edit it. It's just that you can't change the order that they're in. I mean, you could, but you'd have to go back in and, change it. If you've got 25 items of personal property, it's kind of a pain in the neck to go back and put all that information in there again. Now, if you have to add anything, all you do is go down to the bottom, hit add a row, and that'll give you another box to put in more information for a new item of personal property, and it just keeps adding it to the bottom. Okay. Now, let me see if there was anything else I wanted to tell you preliminarily. Okay, so we've gone over 3 different ways to kind of get in. Quick consult, start a new case, or upload a case that you've previously been working on. Those are the 3 scenarios that we're going to be working with. And the way that VADER is organized, we'll go back up to home. There are basically 2 sets of worksheets. You've got your support worksheets and you've got your equitable distribution worksheets. And just to kind of briefly go through that, the support worksheets are organized. I think there's a better way and perhaps a more intuitive way to organize this, but we just took this off of the old Excel organization format. So for those of you that have dealt with it on Excel, you kind of know exactly what we're talking about. But for some of you newer users, you're going to hit support and you've got your shared guideline. Okay. And the reason it's organized like this is the code says that if you're going to do a shared guideline, you must also do a sole guideline and compare the 2. So that's why you'll see shared, sole, and then a summary, which basically just gives you a comparison of what the shared number is to the sole number. Because in some weird situations, you actually get outcomes where the sole guideline number is less than the shared guideline number. Don't ask me why that is. It just works out that way from time to time. So that's why the legislator says you have to do both calculations. So that's why it's organized like that. Then there's the interim arrears worksheet, which I think people forget about, and I just want to go over it with you really quickly. So you've got your shared calculation. I've already done it. Okay. Now, this is telling us that for this particular case, the shared guideline amount payable to Ariana is, let's see. Well, here, I'll just do it. Be easier to see if we hit print. Okay. All right. So you can see down here that the net child support payable to Ariana is $907 a month. But if you're going to court, and as you know, child support is retroactive to the date of filing on an initial petition, as long as there's reasonable efforts made to serve, or on a modification, it's retroactive to the date of service itself, right? So, if it's 5 months before you get into court to ask for the support, what is the automatic arrearage that's been created? That's what the interim arrears worksheet tells you. So we know what the monthly amount of support is, but we got to figure out, if we're now in court, how much does Pete owe to Ariana? So the monthly amount of support, I think it was $961. All right. You got to know when you filed your petition for support, if it's an initial support petition. So let's say it was done on January 1 of 2018. The date of the hearing, by the time you get there, it's like July 5th, 2018. Okay. VADER will tell you, all right, well, between these two periods of time, January 1 of 2018 and July 5th of 2018, if he had been paying that number, he should have paid her $6,727. All right. Now, if he was paying her something, but it wasn't equal to the amount of child support that ultimately got awarded, he should be getting credit for some of that. So you can put in, if he ended up paying like $4,200 over that period of time, you can give him credit for that. And this will tell you what he owes her for the automatic arrearage, which is $2,576. Now, the code is unclear about whether you can get interest on that instant arrearage. Now, we know that on a rule to show cause, if there's already been an order entered that says that he's supposed to pay her a certain sum of money per month, and he doesn't pay it, there's automatically a judgment rate of interest on that. But the code is not entirely clear about whether you get interest from the date you filed the petition until the date the support order is entered, right? So you've got the option. You can either choose to apply the judgment rate of interest, or you can say, no, don't apply that interest. And in my experience, if you present the judge with the judgment rate of interest and can give the judge a number, in all likelihood, you're going to get the interest awarded on it. Now, it's not huge money, but, for best practices, certainly if I'm the one that's seeking support, I'm going to want to ask for that judgment rate of interest on that unpaid amount. And again, for court purposes, you fill this out, you just hit print, and this is one of your exhibits. Okay? So it contains all that information. That's the instant arrears chart. Incidentally, I was talking to, how many of you are really proficient with the, technological courtrooms and presenting exhibits electronically rather than in the books? Has anybody done a whole trial just using the overhead projector? Good. So I need to go do the kick the tires CLE. I really do, because something like this, if you can plug into the judge's screen and show all of these calculations, it just makes it a lot easier to present the information, especially if the judge is making findings as you go as to the monthly income. You can instantaneously put that information in there and show the judge what the number would be. And just pro tip, one of the judges told me offline that for any case where the judge has to consider factors like under alimony 21071, ED 21073, or the best interest factors, the judge was like, I just wish that the attorneys would put on a PowerPoint presentation and just project, for each factor that I have to consider, what is the relevant evidence? And I thought that was such a great idea. If you could just, in your closing, if you could just project what are the different factors that we think are relevant here, and then 5 or 6 proof points, what did you prove during that hearing? And then I said, well, okay, so would you take notes? And he's like, no, do the PowerPoint as you're going, and then give me a printout of the PowerPoint. So just, tip from me to you, I'm going to try to use that in the next hearing that I have to do that PowerPoint idea, which I thought was great. Okay, so again, VADER is organized into support workbooks and equitable distribution workbooks. And the support workbooks are probably the ones that you're most familiar with. We've got the shared calculation, and I showed you how to do the interim arrears. The mixed custody guidelines, those are relatively new. And again, that was only recently passed by the legislature. And you've got different options, like sole shared, you would use where VADER will tell you. One parent has sole custody of one or more children, and both parents share custody of one or more children with the same number of days for each child. Okay, so that's what this worksheet looks like. All right, and again, you can't go wrong if you just go through each line item and see whether it applies to your particular case. And it's organized this way because the statute gives you an order of operations in coming to the number. So you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3 in that order to get the right result. And that's the way VADER is organized. So if you just go through each of the different options for this, it will give you the appropriate number. So that's a sole shared situation. Then you've got multiple shared situations where you've got at least 2 children and they're shared between the parties, but each party has each kid a different number of days. And this looks like a very complicated worksheet to use. And in this particular example, I used 3 kids. And so VADER says, all right, for kid 1, how many days does mom have the kid? How many days does dad have the kid? Same thing for kid 2, right? And you just go through that analysis for each child. And all the statute does is it averages the number of days, right? So even though you're entering all that information at the end of the day, you come down here and all it does is averages the number of days that Pete has a kid. Okay, and the average here is 231 days for mom and 133 days for the dad. And then you just apply the shared guideline to that. But again, you don't have to understand comprehensively how this works. You just have to go through the order of operations in the VADER worksheet and you'll be fine. The other mixed custody arrangement is split shared. And again, VADER tells you when to use that guideline worksheet. And that's for a situation where the parents split custody of 2 or more children. So you've got at least 2 kids where one parent has sole custody of one, the other parent has sole custody of the other, and then they're sharing custody of a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th kid. Okay? And this worksheet helps you with that scenario. Has anybody actually had these scenarios come up yet? So a couple of you have? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, it does come up, and honestly, most of these scenarios originated out of like Tidewater. It was the Tidewater legislators. I'm serious. Like DCSC was like, we've got all these cases where there's kids everywhere and we can't, we gotta figure out how we're going to deal with them. So a lot of our child support legislation actually comes out of those scenarios. And that's why you've got in these worksheets all of this stuff about, the federal poverty guidelines and making sure that, there's adjustment for SSDI and all the rest of it. Most of us, hopefully, and we're not going to have to deal with that because the clients make enough money. But when you're dealing with DCSE cases, all of this stuff comes into play. And so that's why that's all on there. If you ever need it, it's there. Okay. Questions about the support side of things. That's probably the most relatively straightforward. Yes, Don.
I may have mentioned at the beginning, sometimes clients sitting there and numbers come up and they say, well, what would that be?
Yeah.
And I call this up and I want to give them 3 different scenarios. Well,
yeah.
Sole custody,
right.
Child support, got all the numbers.
Right.
What if the judge imputes this number, that number, or that number?
Right.
And sometimes I like to print out those 3 so the client can look
yep.
at how it affects the bottom line.
So what you would do is you'd hit quick consult. Okay, that takes you, and it's a good question. It's worth repeating. You just go to the home page, and you're going to hit quick consult, or rather, start a new case. Quick consult. And that'll give you access to all the worksheets. Okay. And all you have to do is just run your different scenarios and then print each one as you're running it. Now, the problem, again, is that you can't save, you could save 3 different scenarios, but you'd have to download it 3 different times. You'd save it as, new client scenario 1, new client scenario 2, new client scenario 3. Okay, you're welcome. All right.
What was
The last category under support.
C9?
Okay, that is the Ninth Circuit support guideline. And what the Ninth Circuit does is it allows for debt adjustment. And I would commend it to you. If you have a case where, you know, we're seeing a lot of them, there's a guideline amount of spousal support and a guideline amount of child support, right? But you know, the mortgage is like $4,500 a month, and they each have a new car payment, and there's $30,000 worth of credit card debt, and the monthly minimum on the credit cards is $750. And it's like, okay, well, you know, the combined guideline says that these are the numbers, but it's impossible to pay. There's no way my client can pay this when he's also or she is also servicing the debt. Okay. That was a common scenario that the Ninth Circuit decided it was going to deal with. And so what this worksheet does, and I've used it, and I've said this over the years, I've used it in different jurisdictions. I've used it out in Loudoun. I've used it in Prince William. And the judges pay attention to it because they're like, well, if the Ninth Circuit, which I think is the Tidewater region, Williamsburg area, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong if you know your Virginia circuits. What this does is it takes into account monthly debt service. And what it also does is it reduces the support payer's income by both spousal support and child support. And then it's kind of too complicated to get into now, but it's fairly intuitive in terms of the information that needs to be entered here. So you can see, for example, you've got gross incomes of the parties. We're all familiar with that. Number of children, that's easy. But then it has line items for the mortgage or for rent for each party, right? So if the parties are living separately, you're going to input the mortgage payment, and you're also going to input the rent payment for the person who isn't there. Then it allows for consideration of car payments for each party. It allows for consideration of credit card payments, the monthly minimums for each party. And what it does is it adjusts the guideline number to account for that debt service, okay? And the idea is that it presents a more realistic temporary number for support. So again, without getting too into it, if you ever have one of these cases where the debt burden is so overwhelming that, you know, you could certainly argue that the guideline should not be used, that the presumptive number is not appropriate in this particular case, and here's how I want you to deviate. Well, when you're getting to well, how much, you know, how am I going to deviate? You know, you're coming to me with this problem. What is your solution? Well, the solution is to say, well, look what the Ninth Circuit does. Here's how they account for debt service. So run a couple scenarios on that, and it really makes a lot of sense when you look at it and you look at how it impacts the numbers. So great question. Any other questions on support? Yes.
Yeah, have you seen that before?
Mm-hmm.
Your description was the mortgage or the rent or the credit cards, and they're each allocated to individuals.
Yeah.
Those times they're joint. Is there a way to handle that in this worksheet?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've only got one mortgage payment, or like, you do have to decide who's making the direct payments. Okay. So like if it's the mortgage payment, you have to assign it to somebody to make the payment. Like you got to say that either dad or mom is making it. Same thing with the car payments. Like and usually it's the support payer that's making all of those payments. And so you have to choose, but you could have a scenario where, you know, the support recipients got minimum monthly credit card debt too. And so you would assign those direct payments to that person. So again, it's one of those things where you have to play around with it. But again, if you have a case where you're going to need a deviation because the debt service is so high, use that sheet and see what it comes up with. Because that's as good an argument for deviating as any other. And if the court system went through the trouble of coming up with this, then it should be at least informative, if not persuasive, up here. You've got your income and expense statement here. There is a 2-column option, but the normal expense statement looks like this in terms of inputting the information. And again, that's relatively straightforward too. The one thing that you can't do on the online version that you could do in the Excel version is, if you knew how to use Excel, you could unprotect the sheet and go in and change what these different line items are. Well, you can't do that here, but what we do allow you to do is, if you've got other expenses that aren't listed, the categories aren't already set, you can add as many of those as you want. Okay, and when you go to print it, it looks a little bit longer, but we asked the judges if that was going to be a problem, and they said it wasn't going to be an issue. So when you actually go to print this out, it looks like this. So it's a little bit bigger. It's actually a little bit clearer to read.
And just to be clear, this being an Acrobat PDF file, if there was one column or heading you wanted to change, you could edit the PDF.
Oh, that's a great point.
Is, like any other PDF document, you could, if you felt the need to.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't even realize that. Did everybody catch that? You can edit this sheet. So this is a PDF document. And so if you save it as a PDF, if you want to go in and you want to change, like if you wanted to change mortgage to just rent, you could go in and edit the actual PDF document, this document right here. You can't edit it online, but once you've downloaded the PDF file, you could edit it there. That's a great tip. Didn't even think about that. Question?
So earlier when you said we were saving PDF files, I thought they were the static PDFs. But
They are static, meaning I'm talking about changing the name of the text. You can't run calculations offline.
What?
Acrobat files.
Okay, to rephrase, what can you change and what can't you change on this form?
Well, it's a standalone Adobe Acrobat file. So you can open up in Adobe Acrobat, you can click the edit button. Adobe gives you editing features to manipulate or change any aspect of that file. So if you want to change the
like the mortgage.
Get rid of mortgage and just have it say rent, you could select mortgage with the delete key and it would just have rent on your PDF.
But it won't recalculate the numbers.
Correct. Correct. The formulas are not embedded in the PDF document. It's just
You can edit the text.
So if you want to do that, you want to give something another name, I guess you could go through the calculation as though it said something else. Then when you get the print, just change the name.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're working in the program itself and you're changing the numbers and it's doing the automatic calculations for you, as you're hitting print, you're going to save each of those printed documents as a PDF, and you can give it the different scenario names if you wanted. Right. But what we were talking about doing was having different scenarios actually saved in the program itself, and that's something that's a work in progress. Okay. All right, let me take you quickly in the time that we have left through the ED forms. Now, this is for equitable distribution, and the thing that's good about the online version is that in the Excel version, in some of the summary sheets, it wouldn't automatically calculate the values, and the online version now does that. So I'll give you an example of that. The ED forms, that is not as intensive in terms of the calculations that it provides for you, but you use it to provide a summary of all of the personal property that the parties may have. And let me just get back into my Davidson file so I can show you what that looks like. Right now I'm in Quick Consult. I want to go back down to Davidson. So I'm going to choose my file right here, open it, upload it. Be in business in a second. Tells me it's processing. That's a good sign. Okay. So in my ED forms, as I showed you earlier, I had a personal property worksheet already sort of in the works. Okay. And as I enter information here, you can see that I've got, this is a piece of real estate. I've got fair market value. I've got total equity. As I'm entering that information, VADER is tabulating, or should be tabulating in the summary page, all of those values. For some reason, it's not doing it on this. It may be before we updated it. But the point is, these numbers here, VADER should draw all of these numbers and give you a summary and keep track of each item of property and give you the balances as you're entering that information. The old program on Excel didn't do that. And I'm sorry I can't show you an example of that. But if you're entering information to any of these spreadsheets, it'll pull it onto the summary page and it'll give you running balances for all of the property. So you can easily see, okay, I've got a $1.2 million estate, or there's $550,000 of total retirement, okay, on that summary page. A couple quick things on ED funds. I get a lot of questions about the Brandenburg calculation and refinances. And people will call me and they'll say, okay, we've got a number of refinances here and I want to see how the refinances affect the Brandenburg calculation on the marital residence. You do not need to run the refinance sheet just because there has been a refinance. You only use that sheet if there has been a cash out refinance, okay? So when you're doing Brandenburg, Brandenburg is based on contributions. So you're looking at marital contributions and separate contributions of each party to divide up the equity. The theory with a refinance, and I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say that for 5 years, parties have been living in a house. The wife put in $50,000 for the down payment, and the parties paid down the mortgage during the marriage, $25,000, okay? So the total contribution, total investment in the house is $75,000, of which the wife made 50, or 2/3, the parties made 25, or 1/3. That's the division of contributions. You all with me so far? All right. If they refinance the house and they pay off the old mortgage and they take money out, when they take that money out of equity, whatever they take out, let's say they're going to redo the bathroom, they take out $30,000 of cash. So they've now, added $30,000 to their mortgage as a result of the refinance. That $30,000 of cash is beginning to pay the wife back for her separate investment. Okay? So she put in 50 and now they've taken out 30. You got to allocate that $30,000 between the parties, right? Because some of that $30,000 is attributable to the wife's separate contribution and some is attributable to the marital contribution. Why do you have to do that? Well, if the wife is getting repaid some of her initial contribution, and after the refinance, the parties continue to pay down that mortgage, now all of a sudden the marital share is getting bigger. Because again, the wife's initial $50,000 contribution has been paid back, not all of it, but some of it, by that $30,000. So that $50,000 contribution now is, I don't know what the math would be, but now it's 40. Okay? Now, the $25,000 marital contribution, some of that's being paid back by the cash that's being taken out, but you have to allocate for that as you go along with these cash out refinances, or it screws up the different investment allocations. Does everybody follow that? But you only do it when you're taking cash out. If you're just refinancing, and I've refinanced my house 3 or 4 times years ago as the rates were going down, just to get a better rate, we weren't taking any money out. So you don't have to worry about that refinance worksheet unless you're taking money out. Question?
Isn't that unfair unless the wife or whoever put up the initial deposit actually gets back a portion portion of the additional cash out?
Well,
Which normally will not be what happens?
the legal theory is that, look, that money's in hand, you know, so you give it all to her.
It's not in hand, it's in the back.
Well, it's in hand until it gets used on something. And so then the question is, all right, if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, is all right, you got the 30,000, you invested in the bathroom. How much? It's not a dollar for dollar credit for the bathroom. It's how much value did the bathroom add to the house. So you have to figure out, okay, we invested this $30,000 in the bathroom, but the bathroom only added $20,000 worth of value. How much of that additional $20,000 is attributable to the wife? How much is attributable to marital effort? Now, if you do the refinance worksheet, it'll tell you 30% of that $30,000 is the wife's separate money, and the rest is marital. Okay, and you have to just, you know, then you have to follow that logic and apply it to the use of that money. More often what happens is people take money out of the house and then they use it to purchase something else. They use it to purchase a car, or they might put it in a money market account. But it'll tell you at the time they take that money out how much is separate and how much is marital. And then it's up to you to do the tracing of where that money went, which is a real, I don't know if you guys have done tracing recently, but what a mess. I mean, I can't get a statement from a bank from 5 years ago, let alone 15 years ago, because they've all been gobbled up and swallowed, and it's a mess. So, and in order to do the refinance worksheet, the refinance Brandenburg, you need a lot of information. You need the HUD ones from every refinance where they took money out. You need to know the value of the house at the time. It requires a lot of detailed information. And it's just getting harder and harder with all the consolidation amongst the banks to get that information. But anyway, so I wanted to make that point about the refinances. I've got a minute left, so let me just show you the other two sheets that are used quite frequently are the marital funds and the general funds. The general fund sheet is what you use to trace out the separate and marital portions of a retirement account or a money market account. Let me see if I can yeah. So the issue that we were having on this sheet was we were limited in the number of entries that you could put in. So you're looking at 3 different periods of time: prior to the marriage, during the marriage, and then after separation. And, you know, those of you that have used this sheet, you know that you can trace, you know, if somebody had $50,000 in a 401k plan at the time of marriage, you know, at the time of separation, it's now worth $450,000. You can trace that $50,000 and figure out how much it's worth today, okay? And you use it with this general fund sheet. And the issue we were having was that there weren't enough lines to really account for all the contributions that people made over time. We really didn't need a lot of lines for prior to the marriage, so you're limited to 9. But during the marriage now, we've got up to, let's see, yeah, we did 100. Figured that would be enough. Now, I know there are going to be some cases that are going to need more, but let's just hope we, you know, 98% of them are solved with that. And when you print this out, Mike, is there a way to shorten the number of lines?
Not currently. That's
Okay.
something we're working on. Yeah,
Scissors, great idea, Doug.
You know, and I guess if you have a bunch of worksheets, you have an Acrobat PDF file with a bunch of blank pages, you can delete them and sort of shrink the
Okay, that tip is totally worth coming tonight, because the editing the PDF sheets, like, again, it's something I should know. It never occurred to me to do that, but that's something that you can do.
Yeah, what we're looking to do with the programmers is have the ability programmatically for the sheet to delete empty rows, so that when you print it, it's consolidated.
Oh, so if there's no information in there, it just won't print
by
it.
default printing 100 rows for the contributions during marriage, which makes it an 8-page PDF.
Okay. All right. So last thing, when I'm done working in a given case file, I'm going to hit download case. Yeah.
I see Ninth Circuit ED.
Yes.
Anything you want to tell us about that?
The Ninth Circuit ED form. Let me see if I can show you what that looks like. It's not all that different. The property inventory is roughly the same. It's just, this is their particular convention for how they want the information shown. They want to see the property inventory, a separate debt schedule, a budget, and then a proposed ED sheet. Like when you go in and you present your ED case down there, this is what they want to see. So that's the only reason it's set up like this. It's not, there's nothing special about the presentation. It's just like they've said, this is what we want to see. Unlike Fairfax, which, you know, you can present what you want to present. All right, I am over my time, but are there any questions anybody has last minute? When you're done, just hit download your case and you'll be able to save it. You can see it's saved here as a TXT file. And if you tried to open it, that's what it would look like. So if I wanted to save it, file, save as, and then I would just decide where I'm going to save it on my computer. Feel free anytime you have an issue with using VADER, just give me a call. I'm always happy to, you know, work through issues with you. I do get calls from time to time. I'm happy. Usually I get back to you the same day. If it's a technical issue, you call Mike. If it's like how to use it. If it's like, hey, Dan, I'm not sure what sheet I should be using for this particular asset, call me and I'll help you with it. I'm always happy to. Doug?
Is there a reason that we couldn't use that budget sheet in our cases? I mean, I have no idea what it looks like, but it seems like that might be a useful tool, if not a presentation.
It is there for your use. So if you look at it and you think, well, this is something that, let's see if I can print it for you, show you what it looks like.
I assume the judges down there look at this for a feasibility check.
Correct. That's what theirs look like.
I like that one, so you sign it.
Yeah, right. You have to know. You have to sign and notarize it.
That one, if I want someone to sign it. Doesn't always go over well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you want to have it notarized. All right. So that's it. All right, everybody. Hopefully you found that interesting. Call me if you have any questions.